Aleksandr Sokurov's 1990 feature The Second Circle depicts the malaise of a young man attempting to organize the proper procedures required of his deceased father's remains. What did this process entail in the modern 20th century post-World War II monopolized bureaucratic paperwork state? Not as some Terry Gilliam post-Python whimsy, but as some delightfully, predictably, Russian existentialist dread, a highly inheritable trait amongst that nation's great artists. A work of visual poetry, essentially, and what I mean by this is a collection of descriptive moods delivered by staged cinematography rather than written rhetoric. I'd compare it less to a novel, perhaps due to the lack of extensive dialogue, and yes, sooner to a collection of narratively related, chronologically sequential series of expressions. There is no plot to keep track of, it is a series of emotions which we attempt to comprehend. We attempt, although our minds have a difficult time, as if these images were more than words can say. How easily can we describe in words the experience of witnessing these images? Sokurov has an uncanny ability to compose films which could only exist within this medium. If Sokurov wanted to direct the equivalent of a stage play, he'd go to the theatre instead. Even with his historical biopics, no theatre technique could allow for the precise framing, recorded lighting, and, most importantly to those narratives, the powerful silences which define his play's profound unease. Sokurov conjures his conceived dimensions into existence, and they lack a distinct artifice which lesser film productions, and all theatre productions, will inevitably contain. It is as though Sokurov wants to project onto the screen a portal into an imaginary dimension, certainly in his fictional works. They don't feel like productions more than they feel like a god's footage of his subjects. Now, obviously the reason they do feel like that, like not productions, is, ironically, because they are such considered productions, and Sokurov an extremely delicate artist. Sokurov's work can be extremely textually dense, and yet his technical precision is that he comes across as an auteur who wonders, how do I shape an audience's feelings on this dimension I project to them? Now, this is totally different from what would audiences expect from a great cinema show, and sooner a piece of fictitious propaganda about the suffering of its creative subjects. When I say propaganda, consider how deliberately filmic a propaganda picture will be. A propagandist has phenomenal motivation to insist upon, or create entirely, their audience's reaction to the experience. Sokurov is on par with his brilliant Russian ancestors, those legendary silent pioneers, in utilizing the medium for all that it is worth in order to create an incomparable artistic sensation. The Second Circle runs at roughly an hour and a half, and if it were not at least this length, I think its power would have been diminished. Sokurov relies on the sensation of time in transfixing, elevating his audience toward his dimension. Time is a vital component in understanding how ferociously intense our subject's depression is, for it is depression in company of time, or depression as company in spite of time. That coexistence is what makes depression as confident as it is. What makes the depression so strong is that it doesn't go away over time. But why doesn't it? Because where does our life go once our parents pass? At one time, perhaps we would have taken over their legacy. That was why we were conceived, to carry on their role in the surrounding ecosystem. Now, when everyone is a messenger, pencil pusher, or other miscellaneous bureaucrat, we're all equal, we're all replaceable. Equally replaceable. So what's the point of anything? Why have children? So they can experience a similar malaise? Are we recommending life? Life is clearly not pleasant enough that we're willing to be happy to just exist, otherwise there'd never have been a film such as this ever made. If the fact that we can make highly technically and psychologically interesting films about these emotions, then subsequently watch and admire them, is what our current justification for human existence is, then I'll accept it.